attempt to reinterpret Sharia, I mean, the Hadith?
Should be, I can do it, I do it, but Professor
this is not a new debate, this is a big debate.
Right.
But the number of the scholars who are talking about is going up. Right? We have a tradition of the Prophet, and we have hundreds of thousands of sayings of the Prophet. Right? And we have some traditional hadith books which were accepted by the whole population, all Islamic countries as the trusted books. Right? But now the problem is going in this direction. Some scholars are saying that such and such hadith may not be the sayings of the Prophet actually. So some people say this is like the Reformation of the Church in Europe. But some would say, no, it is not the Reformation of religion, but it is not a new debate. It was debated through the centuries, and one collection of the hadith books is different from the other. So the problem here is that the hadith collections are like the Bibles. As we have many Bibles after Jesus, you have these books of hadith, many books. In some countries or in some geographies, such books are accepted by that society, by that Muslim society. And in other Muslim societies, another books have been accepted. So, of course, in time, the number of people who criticize whether these words are coming from the Prophet himself or whether they were improvised after the Prophet. This is a discussion, and this is not a new discussion. So, if you ask me, for example, I cannot say that this is a reformation, because we are not changing the fundamentals of the religion. So, what happened in Europe with the Reformation process? The fundamentals of Christianity have been changed to some extent. So, if you ask me, this is not a big issue, and this is not a new issue.
And interpret out religious books, all of them, even Quran, we are interpreting, and Islam is open to changing that, to interpret. That is also.
First, thank you too for your presentation. I appreciate, well, one of the topics especially is of a lot of interest to me, and that's searching for the way between the traditional and the modern as cultures change and we teach traditional ancient truths to a modern culture. There's always some pushback from the culture. So thank you for bringing that up. My question is a little bit different and maybe hopefully a simpler topic, but who are the religious educators, especially in the primary and the secondary schools, and where do they receive their training For example, is the religious educator in a primary school, do they also teach mathematics or science, or do they teach only religious education or religious instruction?
Religious teacher of religious education is graduating from divinity schools.
From our faculty.
From our faculty.
Even in the secondary?
Yes.
Except for primary schools, they are graduating from they will graduate from Faculty of Education. But this is new applying. This is new applying.
So,
Not from innovative schools, from
so forgive my ignorance, but so the imams focus on they teach and preach in the mosques, but not in the schools.
Yes,
Yeah.
they can
also
give service about religious affairs also.
in the school, also in the
Yeah,
schools.
yeah.
Okay.
Not in schools.
Oh.
Not in schools.
What
It
you
is
said
not allowed.
was
Okay,
correct.
it's not allowed in the.
It's not allowed in schools. Yeah.
Okay, so therefore the division within the faculties.
In order to become a religious instructor in primary or secondary schools, you have to go into the university and you have to be educated in Faculty of Divinity. For primary schools, we have another department which is called the Divinity School for religious teachers, right? You have to graduate from that faculty, from that department. Imams are not allowed to go into class in primary or secondary schools. They are only imams for the mosque.
But our students can give religious services also.
Yeah. Yeah. If you graduate from Faculty of Divinity, if you like, you can also be an imam. If you prefer to be imam, you are allowed to do that. If you prefer to be a teacher, you can go to the Ministry of Education.
Yeah, their preference.
Does the government allow an imam to serve who has not been trained at the university, but perhaps has been trained in Saudi Arabia or Egypt?
No. They are not allowed. So that's why in the beginning we said religious education should be under the control of the state.
Okay. Now, we also have in Turkey a strong conservative movement, conservative Muslim movement. The new president, his wife wears the hijab, and now the hijab is allowed to in government places. And there's been some thought that he's going to bring in more conservative Islam into the country. Do you think is that being discussed, whether or not that will affect these laws about the way religion is taught here? If there are people afraid, or are they discussing if they're going to change this now with the movement of conservative Islam in the country?
Yes.
You want me to answer the question?
I just want somebody to do something.
The present government or the present head of the state,
President.
they are all pro-Europe, right? They want Turkey to become like any European country. They want freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. So they are not they are not intending to make Turkey like Iran or Saudi Arabia. They want some standards for every religious group in Turkey. So I don't think they are intending to change in the state system regarding religious education. So they are So they are pushing forward. They are pushing toward the country towards Europe. They want Turkey to become member of Europe, and they want some European standards in the country. But it is like having the Christian Democrats in power in Germany.
May I have some comment with the previous question that our professor raised? It was about the position of Turkish religious experts, the Hadith interpretations as a project. And as I saw it on the paper, as you were just passing by, that Turkey wrestles that I think is, if not inaccurate, has a deficiency of understanding, because, as you may know, better the interpretation of Hadith workshops must be confounded as a simple process of pure data extraction, because the traditional aspect of Hadith science has its own aspect of research for centuries since of its onset. So the issue is that the debate is mostly not regarding the original material, either to be included or to be excluded, but on a wider aspect, it's about the interpretation of the material. It is very likely you will get the same answer from any of the researchers in the project. That's all I can say.
Teenage students who wear scarf are not allowed to go into the campus of the university. This is the number one agenda. Or the present government is trying to change the law, the legislation, which is called 301, which is about denouncing being Turkish or denouncing Turkishness. So one of the representatives of the Armenian community in Istanbul was killed 1 or 2 years ago. Yeah, one year. The Turkish nationalists backed up such kind of killings, and the present government wanted to change the law because he was being tried. He was on court for insulting the Turkish, the Armenian journalist, right? And why? Because of the legislation 300, Article 301. Okay? The present government wanted to change that law, but the secular establishment doesn't want it. The nationalists does not like the present government because they don't want Turkey being the member of the European Union. So there is a big clash between the strong nationalists and the present governments and the liberals who are siding with the present government. Okay.
Is it true that there are some...
The government passed the legislation on the foundations for the benefit of the religious minorities within Turkey. And the nationalists that are even on that legislation, even the People's Party, the leftist, which is the opposition party, took that legislation to the Supreme Court. Okay, I'm sorry.
Is it true that there are some Islamic scholars in Turkey, not necessarily at universities, but others who believe that the fact that the state controls most of the how religious teachers are being taught and what happens at universities, that is not freedom of religion? That's part of that? That's something
Well,
to
that's
do?
my opinion. Me and one of my colleagues, I studied the state and religion in Europe. We have organized any main European countries like Britain or Germany. So the religious education is controlled by the state heavily, right? For example, you cannot send your children to religious education courses in university or in private courses if they are under 12. It's forbidden because the previous government passed a legislation. So I have some friends, for example. One of them called me from a city on the southern coast of Turkey, asking me that to find a religious course in Istanbul to send his 6th grade daughter for a month in June. But I asked some Quranic courses and they refused. They said we cannot take her because it's forbidden if you are under 12. You have to graduate from secondary school from the 8th grade in order to have the chance to go into a course. So it's forbidden. So that's what the present government wanted to change. But it hasn't got the guts to change all those.
So follow-up question, if hypothetically if they are able to change some things and bring about more religious freedom so that those types of things can happen, would that mean, I don't remember, you talked earlier about a Christian, somebody who wants to study Christianity has to go out of the country to a school someplace and then come back. So seminaries, Christian seminary potentially could also then open up in Turkey because religion for freedom for all religions would be allowed. Could that possibly come about, or would they?
The point is, the secular establishments and the nationalist movements currently do not want so many changes in law. They don't want freedom of religion, or they don't want freedoms. That is the point. Because if you allow some, if you give some freedoms to Muslim religious groups in Turkey, you are supposed to give the same freedoms to minorities, or vice versa. That's why those who are more conservative and more religious ones want the Hadith seminary to be reopened. Okay? But nationalists and secularists, they don't want it. They don't want to give the minority groups such freedoms. Why? Because they are going to lose their power over the people of the country. That is the major problem we are facing today. So, when the present government wants to make changes in law regarding these issues, they just start saying that they are selling the country to Europe, they are selling the country to the United States.
Hocam bir dahaki gruba geçelim mi? Saat 5 oldu.
Tamam.
Müsaadenizle. Can we pass to the next section because it's already 5 o'clock? Thank you very much.
It is made business. So you couldn't manage to switch it off.
If only you told earlier.
Thank you.
Hanımlar onun için erkeklere ihtiyaçları var değil mi? Bu tip şeyleri yapsınlar diye.
I hope you are not right. Being a last speaker so my subject is religious schools in Turkey. Under the subject I want to talk about how Islam is understood in Turkey. Because you know, like Christianity, Judaism, Islam also understood from group differently. This is the same for Islam. So throughout the history, when we look at the history of Islam, we see some denominations or sects emerged for different reasons. Political reasons, theological reasons, and we call schools, more practical ones, like how to pray and or how you act in daily lives, how you apply Islam in your daily practices. We call this the fiqh schools. For political reasons, we saw in the history of Islam, Khawarij and Shia. And for theological reasons, the sects or denominations emerged, Mu'tazila, Jabriya, and As-Sunnah, Ahl-Sunnah, and you know the terms. Under this title, you see Salafiyya, Ash'arism, and Maturidism. I don't know your background about the theology of Islam, so you may learn. Yeah. So Ash'arism and Maturidism may be his own. It is the interpretation of Islamic faith by different groups. For example, in Turkey, people follow the Maturidism in their beliefs, in their faith, and Hanafi school in their daily practices. So this is the general view of Islamic sects throughout the history. Now, when we look at Turkey, now, clearly 99% of the Turkish population is Muslim. And most of them are Sunni. A sizable proportion of the population is affiliated with the Alevi sect. Maybe you heard the Alevi. It's another faction within Islam. And the remainder of the population belong to other beliefs, Jews and Christian communities. But the majority of people are Sunni. So, basic beliefs or articles of faith, we call what Sunni people follows. There are 6 principles you should accept in order to be a Muslim according to Sunnis. First of all, you should believe Allah, God, then His angels, His books, His messengers, the day of judgment, like after death, and predestination, or supremacy of divine will. You must accept these principles in order to be a Muslim. And also, there are practices of Islam, basic duties. You should also act these 5 principles, 5 pillars of Islam, they are called. First one is declaring that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. This is called Shahada in Islam. In order to be a Muslim, one must say this, declare this. So this is the most important formula in Islam. The second one is Salat. Pray 5 compulsory daily prayers. Morning, noon, afternoon, evening, and night. And the payment of zakat also compulsory for Muslims. The Hajj, pilgrimage to Makkah, Sawm, fasting in the month of Ramadan. So in order to be a Muslim according to the Sunnis, because these principles changes according to the sects or denomination. For Shiis, for example, they have different principles. For example, according to the Imam, believing in Imam, also a principle for the faith. But Sunnis do not accept that. So another group in Turkey, after the Sunnis, the large groups, Alevis. They also differs. They are not unique sect or denomination. Within the Alevis, there are lots of understanding, as you see, dergah or lodges, jam houses, associations, foundations, and other institutions. Each organization have different rules and principles. But they do not follow the Sunni principles we mentioned earlier. They understand Salat differently, for example, or Zakat, or Salat, or Hajj. Differs from group to group. Also, in Turkey, there are Sufis. Within the Sunni denomination, also there are different groups. For example, some people accept Sufi or follow Sufi organizations. Also, as you see, there are 6 or 7 groups under these Sufi organizations. They are Sunni, but interpret differently those Sunni principles. Also, all of them. Every group has its own understanding and way.
And are they,
It is like Protestantism, you have many branches. It is an umbrella factor.
do the Sunnis who are not Alawi, who are not Sufi, do they consider the Alawis and Sufis to be heretics?
No, not heretics. There are 3 principles actually in Islam. If someone believes those 3 principles, this is the Tawheed, Nubuwwat, and Akhirah, we call it. Tawheed, the oneness of God, Nubuwwah, the prophet of God, and the other, Akhirah, is afterlife, life after death. If someone believes this, these cannot be considered as heretics.
Okay.
May think differently on other issues. So there are also political understanding of Islam in Turkey. We call milli görüş, the national vision. brought to Turkey by Necmettin Erbakan and established several parties, and nearly all of them banned by constitution. And now this is the sixth one, I think, in operation. Saadet Party, Prosperity Party now. The fourth before closed. And those people interpret politically interprets Islam. So this is another understanding.
Do they put up candidates to be elected in the elections for the parliament? Will you have a candidate from the National Salvation Party?
Oh, those parties are closed, banned.
The sixth one is
Yeah.
These are banned.
Yeah, the sixth one is now open.
But they are the same group.
They are the same group.
They are the same.
Different name.
Yes. Yes.
There's no one in the parliament from the sixth group. They have not been elected to the parliament. Is the answer to your question.
But they couldn't.
Couldn't be.
elections.
They went into the election, yes, but they couldn't be elected.
So when you look at Turkey, out of
Just a second. In the election system, you have to get 10% of the general votes to send to have an MP. If you cannot manage 10% throughout the country, no MP is for you.
Hocam, there's another section to it. You can enter privately, like the Kurdish members were entered into the parliament on your own. And then if you have 20 people in the parliament, then you form a group and be another party in the parliament. And that's how the Kurds are being represented in the parliament. But none of the sixth group people have entered the election in that format. They entered as a party and they were unable to get that 10%, which our professor is talking about.
How much did they get?
About 2.3, something like that.
Here, actually, separations occurs out of national bonds, because the current party has also a Kurdish nationality in the ethnic.
so out of the majority of the Muslim population belong to the Sunni interpretation of Islam in Turkey. The current perception and practice of Islam varies from mystical to folk Islam and from political, conservative, and more modern. What is the situation now in Turkey? So this is a brief explanation about the situation with your questions.
Okay. Any questions? I don't have a question.
May I ask a little bit simple metric within the authority of your knowledge? Since this category gives us a great deal of information, it might somehow imply to our guests that Islam has a clash of difference in its interpretation, which none of us don't think, I believe. But just to give an example, some of those groups might not identify themselves into any of these categories. Just given an example, the example of Fethullah Gülen. Perhaps he might, and his group might not introduce themselves as an adherent of a certain Sufi community. Perhaps this kind of demonstration would be indifferent from what their adherents could describe themselves like. What would
But
you
they are the followers of Said Nursi, so they are following someone, and their tendencies looks like the Sufis.
Right.
What we are saying here is there are three main principles in Islam. Tawhid, Nubuwwat, the oneness of God, and the belief of the prophets, Nubuwwat, and life after death. Lots of those groups accept these three principles.
Right.
On other issues, they may differ. This is the richness of Islam, actually.
So it's not a question of faith.
No.
Oh.
Would you have different sects than, for instance, not the three basic beliefs, but
Yes,
maybe
of course.
some of the other things that they follow?
Of course,
Would they worship together? Would they go to?
for example, some Alevi groups even do not accept God, for example, or the life after death. So they are considered outside of Islam. Also, within the Shia, there are some groups who considers Ali, the cousin of Prophet, and his son-in-law, consider him as God. So this is against the oneness of God, and they are considered outside of Islam.
So if I'm one of those sects and I happen to go to a different sect, like to pray or to the mosque, that's okay. I mean, you can.
If you are following some tradition or some sects, some scholars do not allow you to follow another one.
I think it is like being a member of syndicates. If you are a worker in a company, you go for this syndicate, and I go for the syndicate. In fact, there are many differences between them. Only the leaders are different, for example. So there is an interaction between them. They go in the same mosque. They read the same holy books. Perhaps they differ in reading the minor books written by their leadership. One is Sufi, mystic oriented, and the other is not. So we don't have such clashes. For example, in the past you had in Europe, like Catholics or Catholic groups or Protestant groups. Not like that. Perhaps we can say that we had that in the past between Shiite and Sunni during the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
So the Armenian question is also a good example for the Alevis in Turkey. Most of the Alevis sided with Iran in the past during the Ottoman Empire. So the administration of the Ottoman Empire pushed them to stay in the territories of the empire. They didn't allow them to stay in the center of the empire. So perhaps they, for example, the king before Suleiman the Magnus punished them. They forced them to migrate into the territories. So the problem goes back to that period in the 15th or 14th century.
Thank you for taking the time to prepare the presentation. And my question is focused toward the distribution of the various sects or the various groups throughout Turkey. Do they tend to be isolated geographically or across certain social, economic strata, or are they dispersed throughout the country and across economic
No,
groups?
it's not really, but some of the Alevi groups can be found in certain cities of Turkey. The others spread all over Anatolia.
What about marriages? Will people marry generally within their elite group, or will an Alevi marry
between themselves, not the outside of the community. But in general, the Sunnis or Sufis do not consider sects or denomination in this issue.
So you can have two families that are joined, that have two different religions, without any problem.
As soon as you accept three basic tenets.
We don't have any problem within the case of Christian and Islam marriages because the Quran and the Sunnah gives as permission.
Why there is in most places in the world, in most of the Islamic countries in the world, there is a great deal of hostility between Sunnis and Shiites. But why does that not happen here?
Because in Turkey there are Alevis, but there are little Shi'i groups who are follows the Iranian understanding of Shiism. Very little group which is small. But Turkish Alevis do not follow the Iranian acceptance of Islam. So that's the reason.
Perhaps we don't have petrol in Turkey. We have petrol.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. You say that one of the things you said is that the Alavis, some of them interpret some of the five pillars differently.
Yeah,
Can you give us examples of that? What would be how might they interpret Ramadan or?
In Alevi understanding, it is very complicated. It is hard to say Alevi believes in this or in that. First of all, you should ask which Alevi group. That's the problem. Because there are Alevis who are sided with the son of Islam, like Sunnis. They pray 5 times, accepts all fundamentals of Islam. And there are also Alevis who even do not accept the God.
But then that's one of the principles they violate. One of the 3 beliefs that are required.
For example, the God and the life after death.
So they are atheists.
Yeah, they're atheists. They're openly saying that and writing.
Well, that's one of them would come to a mosque to be allowed in.
Of course. Mosques open.
The problem is some Alevis think that the Alevite interpretation of religion should be considered or treated under the title of Islam. But some of them do not accept Islam, do not want the Alevite belief to be considered under the umbrella of Islam. So that is the major point. And there are many atheist Alevis, many atheists. It is a cultural identity, a kind of cultural identity.
Would an Alevite, would he be allowed to be a professor at the university?
Of course.
And to teach theology?
Yeah, why not? These denominations and sects are not considered in your academic life or in other social activities. It's between you and God.
Or classmates.
Right.
Yeah, we have Alevi students in our faculty as well, but we don't have many.
Including the atheists?
Sure.
The ones who don't believe in God.
I have a friend. She just quit the program. She was an old lady and she was atheist.
Is she?
She was.
There are general exams for for entering the universities. If you took that exam and become successful, you can enter.
There are
So you can be a non-believer
Yes.
and teach the faith.
Yes, there are many. I know some of our students became atheists after graduating from faculty, and they were in secondary school as religious teachers. This is not possible in Europe or United States because they are chosen they are appointed by the church. You have to get a certificate from the church.
By the communities.
If you become an atheist while you're working as a religious teacher, the church may want you to stop educating. So you cannot do that in Turkey because if you have diploma, you are free.
But in the case of a secondary religion teacher, even if they're an atheist, the state tells what the curriculum needs to be.
Okay.
So they have.
As long as you keep up with your program.
You could even be a Quran scholar as long as you abide by the rules.
A person could not be, let's say, teach at the university.
In Faculty of Theology, according to law, there is no problem. But I don't remember any.
Maybe this
Problem.
will be a problem.
Actually, the next thing for religious is here in the Constitution as well.
Shall we stop there? Any more questions? I'm still moderating. Okay. Thank you very much.
We have the privilege the last 2 days to visit the old city, as well as the tomb of the disciple of Muhammad and the church, and there's the canteen area at the shopping.
Yes.
So it was a very fine cultural experience for us to learn the history and to come to know in practice how some of the things we discussed have taken place. So we are looking forward to today to learning some more for ourselves and for us to share as we go back to our different countries and our different students. And we thank you once again for the arrangements, for the hospitality, and for the privilege to learn, to sit at your feet and then to learn. We do have some people who are new to our group, so maybe we should have some introductions. So maybe should we all introduce so that the new people also know what our backgrounds are?
Just names.
Well, maybe just a little bit where we live and what we're studying, so people would know. Okay. So,
My name is Aydın Eroğlu. I teach psychology of religion and also sociology of religion in the Faculty of Theology and University.
My name is Reggie. I'm a student and I'm studying at Marmara University.
My name is Jacob. I'm from the United States and I study theology there. And this year I'm studying theology on an exchange program in Germany. So I live in Germany this year.
My name is Ryan. I'm also studying theology in Germany and returning to the United States to study theology in the fall. And I'm preparing to be a Lutheran clergyman.
My name is Enoch Peterson. I am studying education. I'm an education specialist. I teach English and I have a music education degree. I'm currently studying to become a school director or principal. And my wife and I are currently living in Kyrgyzstan teaching English. Kyrgyzstan?
That's right.
Kyrgyzstan. And this fall we God willing, hope to be teaching English in Ankara. So we'll be moving here to Turkey.
My name is Aydın. I'm the cameraman, the organizer.
My name is İlyas Çelebi, Islamic theology.
Teaching Islamic theology.
My name is İsmail Tasbiner, professor here in the Faculty of Theology as professor of History of Religions.
Well, I am Khalid. I am teaching sociology of religion here at the Marmara University Faculty of Theology, with a special interest in state-religion relations.
I am Brent Smith, and I live and work in near Frankfurt, Germany. I'm a doctoral student as well, and part of those studies involves learning more about Islam.
My name is Rachel Fletcher, and I graduated last year with a degree in literature, and this is kind of my first job. I'm working in communications in Germany for 1 year. So.
My name is Temel Karagöz. I am a master's student in psychology of religion.
My name is Robert Hofer. I teach theology, world religions at Concordia University in Portland, Oregon. And I had the privilege to be here in October to visit Turkey as well as Qatar to arrange a course for students to come to these countries, all appreciating Muslim societies. And I'm happy that it's been able to have part of that course take place in these last 4 days here. Okay, then I think we should proceed with our program unless there's any other arrangements that we need to make. We have a presentation on Muslim-Christian relations. Associate Professor İsmail Tasbiner.
Ben tabii ki Türkçe sunacağımı söyledi. Onun için Türkçe tepkimi sunacağım veya sohbeti Türkçe yapacağım.
Tercüme etmek lazım.
Şimdi konuşmamın
This will be in Turkish and I'll do the translation.
Konuşmamın ilk kısmını İslam ve Hristiyan münasebetlerinin teolojik temelleri üzerinde duracağım.
This will be the theological basis of Islam.
Daha sonra tarihte İslam-Hristiyan münasebetleriyle ilgili belli başlı konulara değineceğim.
Then we will go into the relationship between Muslims and Christians in history.
Daha sonra da daha çok günümüzü ve özellikle fakültedeki İslam-Hristiyan münasebetlerini ilgilendirebilecek Hristiyanlıkla ilgili eğitimi ve faaliyetlerle ilgileneceğim.
Then I will go into the details of today's world and what our faculty does regarding this respect.
Şimdi Müslüman-Hristiyan münasebetlerinin temelleri İslam'da Kur'an-ı Kerim'e dayanmaktadır. Yani bunun temeli Kur'an'dır.
The first relationship regarding these two religions is based on the Quran.
Kur'an'da insanoğlu yeryüzünde Allah'ın halifesi olarak yaratılmıştır. Bu nedenle dünyadaki her türlü problem insanı tabii dolayısıyla da Müslümanı ilgilendirmektedir.
People were created by Allah as the caliph on earth, representing the divine being.
Hristiyanlar da bir dünyanın parçası olduğu için onların meseleleriyle de ilgilenmek onun bir parçası o görevin.
Of course, dealing with Christians and people of the book, as we call it, dealing with their matters is a worldly matters
yani
for the Muslims as well.
Bu bir ontolojik demek ki görevdir bir anlamda.
This is an ontological mission as far as the Quran is concerned.
İkincisi İslam'ın evrenselliği ve İslam'ın tüm insanları muhatap almasıdır.
The second one is the universality of Islam and taking Islam, all peoples on earth, into dialogue.
İslam inancına göre İslam son din olduğu için her ne kadar diğer dinlerin varlığını kabul etse de özünde bütün dinlerin İslam olduğunu kabul eder.
The basic understanding of Islam being the last religion on earth is that all other religions, understanding their differences, happens to be Islam as well.
Kur'an-ı Kerim'de dinlerin şeriatları farklı olsa da özünde İslam olduğu belirtilmektedir.
There may be differences in the Quran between the peoples of the book and the Muslim people, but people are regarded as being Islamic.
Üçüncüsü, Hristiyanların inandığı Tanrı'nın Kur'an'da Allah olarak isimlendirilmesi ve Hristiyanların asli kitabının tasdik edilmesi.
God is named in the Quran by the name of Allah, and the Christian book, the Bible, is being ratified by the Quran.
Bu nedenle mesela Kur'an-ı Kerim'de Meryem'e Hz. İsa'yı bahşedenin Allah olduğu.
So in the Quran, chapter 19, Maryam, meaning Mary, God's gift to Maryam is Isa, namely Jesus Christ.
Hz. İsa'ya İsrailoğullarına İncil'i tebliğ etmesi için İncil'i verenin Allah olduğu.
It was the same Allah that gave Isa the book, which is known as the Bible, so the revelation would be given to the Christians.
Havarilere vahiy gönderen yine o Allah olduğu bahsedilmektedir.
So the revelation given to the apostles was also revealed by Allah.
Bu anlamda inklusivist bir yaklaşım sergilediğini Kur'an'ın söyleyebiliriz.
So the Quran has included peoples of the book within its perimeter.
Bunun dışında Hristiyanlar yeryüzündeki diğer dinlerden farklı olarak Müslümanlara Hindu ve Budistlerden daha yakın kabul edilir. Çünkü bizzat Kur'an-ı Kerim onlardan bahsetmektedir. Yani diğer dinler gibi göremeyiz Hristiyanları.
People of the book, namely the Jews and the Christians, are mentioned by the Quran as being a different elite group compared with Buddhism, for example, and other religion faiths that exists on earth. And in fact, Christians are called the closest to Muslims in the Quran.
Bir ileri adım daha Kur'an-ı Kerim'de Hristiyanları ortak bir kelimeye davet edildiği ayeti de mevcuttur. Yani onlarla münasebet kurmaya, irtibat kurmaya.
3'e 64.
Ali İmran'ın 64. ayetinde Allah'tan başkasına ibadet edilmemesi, hiçbir şeyi ona ortak koşmamak ve insanları birbirine tanrı edilmemesi konusunda ortak bir tanrı inancına davet etme açıkça bir davetiye vardır.
In chapter Ali Imran, which is the 3rd chapter, verse 64, Allah is inviting the peoples of the world to come to terms with each other on a common denominator, which must be that there is one and only one God, and that God has no parity. As long as this is accepted, that is where the invitation openly is to the universal mankind in the Quran.
Hemen bir parantez açacağım. Günümüzde de özellikle son Papa 16. Benoît'ın yapmış olduğu Ratisbon'daki konuşma sonucunda Müslümanlar uluslararası bir çağrıda bulunmuşlardır ve ortak kelimeye gelin birlikte konuşalım diye bir 138 ilim adamının imzasıyla meşhur olan bir çağrı vardır. Burada onu da dile getirmek isterim.
138 Islamic scholars recently have made this invitation, a universal invitation that all scholars of religion should come to understanding under that chapter 3, verse 64.
Ve bu mektup sadece Papa 16. Benoît'a değil, bütün Hristiyan aleminin dini temsilcilerine gönderilmiş uzun bir listeden oluşmaktadır. Yani muhatapları dünyadaki bütün Hristiyan alemdir.
So this, the letter was issued not only to the recent Pope, but to all the clergymen on earth recently.
Son olarak
all the Christian clergy, I should say.
Son olarak da nasıl bir diyalog kurulacağı konusunda da Kur'an-ı Kerim'de açık bir ifade yer almakta. Ehli kitapla en güzel bir şekilde onlarla tartışınız. Yani güzel bir şekilde dediği haklarını karşılıklı saygıya dayalı bir görüşme içerisinde olması özellikle belirtiliyor.
Hocam bu hangi?
Ankebut
46.
Evet.
29'a 46. In chapter 29, Ankebut, verse 46, God is telling the Muslims to deal with the people of the book in the best possible way and come to terms with them.
Evet, bunlar Kur'an-ı Kerim'deki doğrudan ayetler diyebiliriz. Hristiyanlıkla ve diğer dinlerle ilgili İslam'ın yapmış olduğu tespitler, yani bunları da konuşmaya ve diyaloğa iten sebepler diyebiliriz. İkinci bir şey.
Hocam bunu bir söyleyeyim.
Tabii.
So these are some of the verses from the Quran which kind of is promoting the Muslim side to have dialogue with the Christian side.
Bunun dışında şimdi ikinci nokta İslam'ın kendi yapısından kaynaklanan diğer bir nokta var. O da İslam'ın bir davet dini olması. Yani İslam'ın davete dayalı bir din olması ve insanları bu dine davet etmekle mensuplarını yükümlü kılması.
So the congregation of the Muslim world is bound by the invitation to Islam. That's the style in Islam. You invite people to become Muslims.
Yani bir misyoner dinidir aynı zamanda. Misyonerlik dinidir. Misyonu vardır. Bir misyoner dinidir.
So that is the mission of the Muslim faith, inviting people to become Muslims.
Her bir Müslüman kilise tarafından nasıl Hristiyanlar görevlendiriliyor